Don't turn around. The man's voice came from somewhere behind the hedges, low and steady, as if it had practiced calm its entire life. If you scream, I lose my job. And if I turn around, you'll never forget tonight. The water around her rippled sharply. Olivia froze mid-breath, her body half submerged, moonlight sliding across the surface of the pool like broken glass. Her heart slammed so hard she felt it in her throat. For one terrible second, instinct screamed at her to shout, to call for security, to reclaim control the way she always did. "Who are you?" she asked instead. Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. "I'm the gardener," the man said. "And I've already seen everything." Silence followed, thick and charged. Olivia gripped the edge of the pool, knuckles whitening. The house behind her loomed dark and quiet, every window a reminder that tonight, for once, she had sent everyone away. No assistants, no driver, no bodyguard hovering at the gate. Just water, darkness, and a stranger who had caught her at the exact moment she believed herself alone. "I'm turning my back," the man added. She heard the soft crunch of gravel as he stepped away, then the faint rustle of fabric. A towel landed neatly on the lounge chair beside the pool. "Take your time. I won't look again." She stared at the towel, stunned. Slowly, cautiously, Olivia rose from the water and wrapped it around herself. Her hands trembled, more from shock than cold. When she finally spoke, her tone had changed. "You could have said nothing," she said. "You could have watched." "I know," he replied, still facing the garden. "That's why I didn't." The words settled heavier than she expected. Olivia Hart had built an empire on leverage, on understanding exactly what people would do when no one was watching. This wasn't part of any model she knew. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. "Yes," the man said without hesitation. "Everyone does." He paused, then added, "But tonight, that doesn't matter." She studied his silhouette. He stood tall but deliberately still, hands clasped behind his back as if at attention. A worker's posture, disciplined, controlled. It struck her, uncomfortably, that he was the only one here showing restraint. "What's your name?" she asked. "Malik," he said. "Malik Johnson." Olivia swallowed. "You can turn around now." He didn't. "I don't need to." The answer landed with quiet force. For the first time in years, Olivia felt something dangerously close to shame. Not because she'd been seen unclothed, but because she'd been seen at all unguarded, unprepared, stripped of the armor she wore so effortlessly in boardrooms and press conferences. "I'm sorry," she said, the words surprising even herself, "for putting you in this position." Malik nodded once. Apology accepted. She waited for him to say more, to soften it, to reassure her. He didn't. The simplicity unsettled her more than anger would have. "You don't seem afraid," she said. "I learned a long time ago," Malik replied, "that fear doesn't protect you. Choices do." Something in her chest tightened. Olivia stepped back, clutching the towel, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt standing there while he remained composed. "You can go," she said. "It's late." "I was finishing up the irrigation line," he answered. "It burst near the west hedge. I'll be done in 10 minutes. She hesitated, then nodded. "All right." As she walked toward the house, she stopped. "Malik," she said, turning back. "Yes, ma'am?" "Thank you," she said quietly. He met her eyes for the first time then, just briefly. His gaze was steady, unreadable. "You're welcome," he said. Inside, Olivia leaned against the glass doors, heart still racing. The house felt cavernous, every polished surface reflecting a version of herself she no longer fully recognized. She changed quickly, pulling on a robe, her movements mechanical. From the kitchen window, she watched Malik return to his work, kneeling by the hedges, methodical and focused, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. It disturbed her how easily he resumed normalcy while her world tilted. 10 minutes later, when he gathered his tools, Olivia found herself opening the door again. "Malik," she called. He turned, surprised but attentive. "I wanted to make sure you got home safely," she said, the words awkward in her mouth. "It's late." "I will," he said. She nodded, then added, "I'll have my assistant adjust your pay. Tonight shouldn't—" "No," Malik interrupted gently. "Please don't." She frowned. "Why not?" "Because I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just did what was right. That shouldn't cost you extra." The statement hit harder than any accusation. Olivia had spent decades rewarding outcomes, not principles. She searched his face for resentment, for expectation. Found neither. "Very well," she said after a moment. "But if you ever need anything—" "I won't," Malik said, not unkindly. "But thank you." He slung his bag over his shoulder and headed toward the gate. Olivia watched until he disappeared into the dark, the click of the latch echoing softly behind him. She closed the door and stood there, listening to the quiet. Later that night, unable to sleep, Olivia returned to the pool. The water lay still, innocent, betraying nothing of what had occurred. She sat at the edge, robe wrapped tight, and let the memory replay. Not the exposure, not the fear, but the moment he turned away. For years, she had believed power was what protected her. Tonight had proven otherwise. Somewhere in the garden, a sprinkler clicked on, mist catching the moonlight. Olivia stared at the ripples spreading across the pool's surface and thought, for the first time in a very long while, that perhaps being seen wasn't the greatest danger. Perhaps it was being invisible to your own conscience. If you've ever been judged for who you are, not for what you've done, please like and comment. I understand. This story is told for those who have been seen as invisible. Morning came to Malibu without ceremony. Olivia Hart woke before the alarm, the remnants of the night still clinging to her like salt on skin. She lay still for a moment, listening to the house breathe, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant hush of waves beyond the cliffs. The pool scene replayed itself uninvited, not as spectacle but as a single, unmovable fact. Someone had chosen decency when he didn't have to, and it had unsettled her more than any scandal ever could. She dressed quickly, selecting a tailored navy suit, the kind that suggested authority without needing to announce it. Coffee, black, untouched pastries on the counter. By the time her driver pulled up, Olivia had sealed the memory behind her eyes and resumed the posture the world expected. The drive into Los Angeles traced a familiar route along the coast before turning inland, where glass and steel replaced sea air. Hartwell Systems headquarters rose from the street like a promise made permanent. Inside, the lobby hummed with the practiced efficiency of people who knew how to move without being seen. Olivia crossed the marble floor with a nod here, a brief smile there, each gesture calibrated. She entered the executive elevator alone, watching her reflection settle into place. CEO, visionary, unshakable. She needed that armor today. The boardroom was already half full when she arrived. Screens glowed with numbers, graphs breathing up and down like restrained animals. Cassandra Vale stood near the head of the table, tablet in hand, her expression polite and precise. Cassandra had a way of appearing supportive while sharpening the blade. "Good morning, Olivia," she said, voice smooth. "We were just reviewing the merger projections." Olivia took her seat without comment, scanning the room. Directors, legal counsel, a representative from the investment bank. Familiar faces, all of them alert to weakness the way sharks sense blood. The meeting began without preamble. A slide appeared. Stock volatility over the past week. Another followed, projections narrowing, then tightening further. "The market is skittish," Cassandra said, stepping forward. "They need reassurance. The acquisition stabilizes us." A director cleared his throat. "We've built this company on independence," he said. "Selling a controlling stake sends the wrong message." Cassandra smiled thinly. "It sends the only message that matters right now," she replied. "Confidence." Olivia listened, hands folded, jaw set. The arguments circled as they always did. Efficiency versus identity, growth versus control. She had weathered worse. Yet today, something snagged. When Cassandra suggested a public appearance, a controlled narrative to soothe investors, Olivia felt the night's echo stir. A narrative, Olivia repeated, eyes lifting. About what? Cassandra hesitated just a beat. About leadership, she said. Stability, focus. The room watched Olivia for her response. She nodded once. We'll discuss communications after legal reviews, the terms, she said, voice even. The meeting pressed on. An hour later, as the final slides faded, Cassandra leaned in slightly. There are rumors, she said quietly. Nothing concrete. But Travis King has been asking questions. Olivia's gaze hardened. Travis King thrived on implication. About the merger? Olivia asked. Cassandra's smile didn't reach her eyes. About you, she said. The room stilled. We'll handle it, Olivia replied. We always do. She rose, signaling the end. Chairs scraped softly as people stood. Cassandra watched her go, calculation flickering. In her office, Olivia closed the door and let the silence settle. The view framed the city in disciplined lines. She sank into her chair, fingers steepled, and for the first time that morning allowed herself a thought she didn't authorize. The gardener's voice, calm in the dark. Don't turn around. The phrase intruded like a truth she hadn't budgeted for. She shook it off and pressed the intercom. Ellen, she said, I need a full review of our contractor agreements. Groundskeeping included. There was a pause on the line. Of course, her assistant replied. Any particular reason? Olivia chose her words. I want consistency, she said. Across the board. When the line went dead, she exhaled. Lunch passed unnoticed. A salad arrived and remained untouched. Emails stacked. Legal memos pinged her phone. In the afternoon, Dr. Ruth Alvarez's name flashed on the screen. Olivia let it ring once, then answered. You're calling during market hours, Olivia said lightly. That's new. Ruth didn't indulge the deflection. I had a feeling you'd be up early, she said. You don't sound rested. Olivia glanced at the city below. I'm fine, she said. Ruth hummed, unconvinced. Your mother used to say that right before she made a mess, she replied. The mention landed softly, but it landed. Dinner tonight? Ruth asked. Olivia hesitated. The day pressed in. Another time, she said. Soon. Ruth sighed. Soon is how people postpone the truth, she said, then softened. Take care of yourself. The call ended. By evening, the city had dimmed to a grid of lights. Olivia gathered her things and descended to the garage. As the car pulled away, she found herself watching the road without seeing it, the meeting replaying alongside the pool's stillness. The contrast felt obscene. In one room, power negotiated itself into permanence. In the other, a single choice had cost a man nothing and given her everything she didn't know she needed. She arrived home to quiet, the garden lit low. The pool lay smooth, untroubled. She stood at the glass for a long moment before turning toward the hall. Upstairs, Olivia paused outside the guest room she never used. Inside, the bed remained untouched, the space curated and empty. She thought of Cassandra's measured concern, of Travis King's shadow, of contracts and narratives. She thought of a towel placed carefully on a chair. Control had always been her currency. Tonight, she realized, it had limits. She set her phone on the nightstand and turned off the light, allowing the dark to come. Sleep, when it arrived, did so unevenly, carrying with it the unsettling certainty that the next move she made would not be invisible, and that was precisely the point. Malik Johnson's mornings began before the sun decided whether it would show up. At 4:45 a.m., the alarm on his phone vibrated against the nightstand. A soft insistence he answered without resentment. He sat up slowly, careful not to wake his mother in the next room, and listened for the familiar rhythm of her breathing. When it stayed even, he allowed himself to move. The apartment was small, a second-floor unit in Inglewood that smelled faintly of coffee grounds and antiseptic wipes. It was clean in the way places become clean when order is the last thing you can control. Malik pulled on his work boots, laced them tight, and stepped into the kitchen to brew a single cup of coffee. He drank black. Sugar was a luxury he'd stopped buying months ago. By the time the sky softened from ink to charcoal, he was loading tools into the back of his pickup. The truck was old but reliable, its engine complaining only briefly before settling into a steady hum. Malik checked the folder tucked behind the passenger seat, the one he never forgot. Invoices, insurance letters, appointment slips, all carefully organized and all, lately, saying the same thing in different words. Not covered. Out of network. Patient responsibility. He shut the door harder than necessary and drove toward the freeway, the radio off, his thoughts louder than any news. The hospital came into view as he exited, a low concrete sprawl that looked indifferent to hope. Malik parked in the same spot he always did and walked inside with practiced familiarity. The nurses knew him by name. "Morning, Malik," one said kindly. He nodded back, offering a smile that cost him something. His mother lay propped against pillows, thinner than she had been even a week ago, her hair tucked under a scarf she insisted on wearing. "You're late," she teased. "I was starting to think you'd finally found a better place to be." He leaned in to kiss her forehead. "There is no better place," he said, and meant it. They talked about nothing first. The weather, a neighbor's new dog, the way hospital coffee always tasted burned. Malik saved the hard conversations for later, for when there were doctors around to soften the words. When the oncologist arrived, clipboard in hand, Malik stood, bracing himself. The update was careful, professional. Progress here, concern there. Then came the numbers, delivered with sympathy but no apology. The new treatment showed promise. Insurance had declined coverage. Malik nodded as if he were absorbing data, not a verdict. "How much?" he asked. The doctor glanced at the clipboard. 260,000, she said, approximately. Malik thanked her. He always did. After she left, his mother watched him with eyes that saw too much. "We don't have that," she said softly. "I know," he replied. She reached for his hand. "You don't have to do this," she said. "You've already done enough." He squeezed her fingers gently. "I'm not done," he said. The words were steady, even as something inside him fractured. By noon, Malik was back in the truck, heading toward his first job. Lawns didn't care about hospital bills. Hedges still needed trimming. The work grounded him, the physicality of it a relief. He focused on clean lines, on the satisfying resistance of branches giving way. It was near the end of the day, at a property in Santa Monica, that his phone buzzed with a call he recognized. An unknown number. Los Angeles area code. He let it go to voicemail and finished coiling a hose before checking the message. "Mr. Johnson," a woman's voice said, clipped and confident. "This is Cassandra Vale from Hartwell Systems. I'd like to speak with you. Please call me back." He stared at the phone for a long moment. The name meant something now. He had seen her, from a distance, once or twice when he worked at Olivia Hart's property, always composed, always surrounded by people who deferred. Malik didn't like surprises. He called back anyway. "This is Malik Johnson," he said when she answered. "You wanted to speak with me?" Cassandra's tone warmed. "Thank you for calling back," she said. "I understand you do contract work for Miss Hart." Malik waited. "I wanted to clear up a few things," she continued. "There have been misunderstandings." The words sat poorly. "I'm not sure what there is to clear up," Malik said. "I do my job." "Of course you do," Cassandra replied. "This isn't about your work quality. It's about boundaries." Malik felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the sense of a line being drawn without his consent. "What kind of boundaries?" he asked. Cassandra paused, choosing her words. "Miss Hart values discretion," she said, "and we want to ensure there are no situations that could be misinterpreted." Malik thought of the pool, the towel, the choice he'd made without witness. "I haven't misinterpreted anything," he said. "Neither has she." Cassandra's smile was audible. I'm sure, she said. Nevertheless, we'd like to offer some assistance. They met the next day at a cafe near the hospital, a place Malik would never have chosen. Cassandra arrived precisely on time, immaculate in a tailored jacket. She ordered an espresso and didn't touch it. I'll be direct, she said, sliding an envelope across the table. We're prepared to cover your mother's medical expenses. Malik didn't reach for it. In exchange, she continued, you'll step away from Miss Hart's property. Permanently. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. Everyone walks away protected. Malik's jaw tightened. Protected from what? He asked. Cassandra met his gaze. From stories, she said. From assumptions. From unnecessary complications. The word unnecessary echoed cruelly. Malik thought of his mother's hand in his, of the doctor's eyes. He thought of Olivia standing by the pool, shaken and human. You're asking me to disappear, he said. Cassandra tilted her head. I'm offering you a solution, she replied. One that helps your family. Malik looked down at the envelope, at the thickness of it. The amount inside could change everything. It could save a life. And if I say no? He asked. Cassandra's smile faded just enough. Then we proceed differently, she said, and I can't promise the outcome will be kind. Malik left the cafe without touching the envelope. He walked until his legs burned, the city blurring past him. By the time he reached the hospital again, dusk had settled. His mother slept, her face peaceful in a way that broke him. He sat beside her and weighed dignity against survival, principle against breath. There were choices you made in daylight, and choices you made in the quiet, when no one was watching and the cost was yours alone. Malik rested his forehead against the bed rail and closed his eyes. Justice, he thought, wasn't loud. It was what you did when the world gave you a way out that asked you to leave yourself behind. The decision Olivia Hart made the following morning did not feel heroic. It felt administrative, almost dull, which was how she knew it mattered. She arrived at her office earlier than usual, the city still shaking itself awake, and asked for a full review of every contractor agreement Hartwell Systems held across its properties. Groundskeeping, maintenance, security, cleaning services, no exceptions. Ellen blinked on the other end of the line. That's a lot of paper, she said carefully. I want consistency, Olivia replied. If we value discretion, we value fairness. Start there. By mid-morning, the conference table in Olivia's office was crowded with binders and digital folders. Legal counsel dialed in, voices layered with caution. You're proposing standardized rates, one attorney said, scrolling. Guaranteed minimums, overtime protections. Olivia listened, fingers resting flat on the table. I'm proposing dignity, she said. Put it in whatever language makes you comfortable. There was a pause, then a murmur of assent. Cassandra Vale appeared in the doorway, unannounced, her expression composed. I heard you're restructuring vendor terms, she said lightly. Olivia didn't look up. I am, she said. Cassandra's gaze flicked to the binders. This will draw attention, she warned. Everything draws attention, Olivia replied. I'd prefer it draw the right kind. When the call ended, Olivia leaned back, fatigue pressing behind her eyes. She thought of the towel placed neatly on a chair, of a voice that had chosen restraint. She opened her calendar and blocked an hour she didn't have. Then she called down to the property manager at Malibu. I'd like Malik Johnson to stop by this evening, she said, after work hours. Let him know it's optional. The manager hesitated. Of course, he said. Malik arrived just before sunset, his truck pulling into the drive with a familiarity that surprised him. He'd slept poorly, the envelope from Cassandra Vale sitting unopened in his glove compartment like a verdict waiting to be read. The hospital smell clung to him despite the shower he'd taken. When the housekeeper let him in, he paused at the threshold, aware of the imbalance the space implied. Olivia met him in the living room, dressed simply, no entourage. Thank you for coming, she said. If this is a bad time, it's fine, Malik replied. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of the day. They sat at the dining table, not opposite ends but adjacent, an intentional choice that didn't go unnoticed. Olivia slid a folder toward him. "I reviewed our contractor agreements," she said. "All of them." Malik didn't touch the folder. "This isn't about last night," she added quickly. "At least, not only." He met her gaze. "What is it about?" he asked. Olivia chose honesty over polish. "It's about how easily I could have ignored what mattered," she said, "and how often I have." He absorbed that without comment. Olivia continued, words measured. "I'm standardizing pay, benefits, and protections across properties. Overtime, guaranteed minimum hours, clear grievance channels." Malik glanced at the folder now. "Why?" he asked. She didn't dodge it. "Because it should have been this way already," she said. "And because I don't want to reward decency with favors. I want to remove the need for them." He considered that, then shook his head slightly. "People will say, 'This is because of me,'" he said. "People say things," Olivia replied. "They always have." She took a breath. "I also wanted to apologize," she said. The word landed carefully between them. "For assuming privacy without considering who that puts at risk. For treating discretion as something I'm owed." Malik studied the grain of the table. "You apologized already," he said. "Last night." "I know," she said. "This one is different." He nodded once. "Then I accept," he said. "But I don't need more money." She smiled, not surprised. "I expected you to say that," she said. "This isn't a raise. It's a baseline. For everyone." They sat in a quiet that wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the garden lights flickered on, softening the edges of hedges Malik knew by heart. Olivia gestured toward the kitchen. "Would you stay for dinner?" she asked. "Not as staff. As my guest." Malik hesitated. Boundaries mattered. So did appearances. He thought of the cafe, the envelope, the way power asked for silence. "All right," he said. "But I'll help." She laughed softly. "Deal." They ate simply roasted chicken, vegetables, bread torn by hand. Conversation stayed on safe ground at first. Music, the way traffic had worsened since summer, how Malibu changed when the tourists left. Gradually, it deepened. "My mother used to work 3 jobs," Olivia said, surprising herself. "She hated charity, said it made people lazy." Malik smiled faintly. "Mine hates it too," he said. "But she hates pain more." The sentence lingered. Olivia didn't press. She didn't need to. After dinner, Malik stood, collecting his jacket. "Thank you," he said. "For the meal, for the changes." Olivia met his eyes. "Thank you," she replied. "For setting a standard I didn't know I'd fallen below." He nodded and headed for the door. At the threshold, he paused. "There are people who won't like this," he said quietly. Olivia's mouth curved, resolute. "There always are." When Malik drove away, the envelope still unopened, Olivia returned to the table and gathered the folders, the weight of them no longer abstract. She knew this was only a first line crossed, not a finish. Systems resisted reform the way bodies resisted pain. Upstairs, she placed a call to legal to finalize the terms. Then, finally alone, she stood by the pool as the sky darkened, the water reflecting her face without distortion. She thought of choices made when no one was watching and understood, with a clarity that steadied her, that the hardest work would begin not with exposure, but with consistency. The following evening settled over Malibu with a softer light, the kind that blurred edges and made even hard decisions feel provisional. Olivia Hart stood in her kitchen, sleeves rolled to the forearms, watching a pan warm on the stove. It was an unfamiliar posture. She had hosted dinners for donors, investors, heads of state, all orchestrated by teams whose job was to ensure nothing went wrong. Tonight there were no place cards, no agenda, just a quiet house and a choice she had already made, one that felt irreversible in a way mergers never did. Earlier that day, She had signed the final approval on the revised contractor standards. Legal had pushed back, predictably. Procurement had asked for phased rollouts. Olivia had listened, nodded, and then said no. The policy would apply immediately. Minimum rates. Overtime protections. Clear reporting channels that didn't funnel back into silence. She knew the ripples would reach the boardroom soon enough. For now, she focused on the pan, on the smell of garlic warming in olive oil, on the grounding fact of doing something with her hands. When the doorbell rang, Olivia wiped her hands and took a breath. Malik stood on the threshold, jacket slung over one shoulder, uncertainty carefully masked by courtesy. "You didn't have to cook," he said. "I wanted to," she replied, stepping aside. The house felt different with him in it, less like a showroom and more like a place where decisions had consequences. They moved through the kitchen together without choreography, negotiating space instinctively. It struck Olivia that this, too, was a kind of power, knowing when not to direct. They ate simply, the conversation easing in fits and starts. Malik spoke about the early jobs he'd taken after leaving the service, the way people assumed a uniform ended your story. Olivia listened, really listened, noting where he paused, where he chose precision over confession. She told him about her mother's insistence on paying cash at the grocery store, about learning early that owing people gave them leverage. "I thought that was strength," she said. Malik considered that. "It's one kind," he replied. "But it's lonely." After dinner, Olivia brought out the folder, setting it on the table without ceremony. Malik opened it this time, scanning the pages with a practiced eye. "This helps more than you know," he said quietly. "Not just me." Olivia nodded. "That's the point." He hesitated, then met her gaze. "People will say you're doing this because of me," he said. "They'll say I got special treatment." Olivia didn't flinch. "Then I'll correct them," she said, publicly, if needed. The certainty in her voice surprised them both. Later, as Malik prepared to leave, Olivia walked him to the door. Outside, the garden lights cast long shadows, familiar now in a way they hadn't been days ago. "There's something else," Olivia said, stopping short of the threshold. Malik waited. "If anyone from Hartwell contacts you again," she continued, choosing each word, "about anything that makes you uncomfortable, I want you to tell me." He studied her face, weighing intent against experience. "All right," he said, "but I don't want protection." She nodded. "Neither do I," she replied. "I want accountability." He left with a nod, his truck disappearing down the drive. Olivia stood there longer than necessary, then returned inside and cleaned the kitchen herself, the ordinary motions a balm. Upstairs, she sat at her desk and drafted a memo she hadn't planned to write, clarifying the policy changes and taking ownership of them. She didn't mention names. She didn't need to. When she finished, she didn't send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. Across the city, Malik sat in his truck outside the hospital, the envelope from Cassandra Vale still unopened in the glove compartment. He had listened to Olivia, believed her, and still felt the weight of what he hadn't told her. The number from Cassandra buzzed again on his phone. He silenced it without listening. Inside, his mother slept, the steady rise and fall of her chest a reminder that principals did not pay invoices. Malik rested his forehead against the steering wheel and counted to 10, then 20, the discipline automatic. Choices, he reminded himself, were cumulative. One did not erase another. Back in Malibu, Olivia stepped out to the pool. The water reflected the stars, unbroken. She sat at the edge, shoes off, feet just touching the surface. The memory of the night returned, not as threat but as measure. She understood now that crossing a line didn't always announce itself with spectacle. Sometimes it arrived quietly, disguised as policy, as dinner, as the decision to correct a system instead of compensating for it. She stood, squared her shoulders, and went back inside, aware that whatever came next would test the consistency she'd promised herself. The first sign that things were changing came quietly. the way most uncomfortable truths did. Malik noticed it on a Tuesday morning when he pulled up to the Malibu property and found a new security guard at the gate. The man glanced at Malik's truck, then at Malik himself, eyes lingering a fraction too long. "Delivery?" the guard asked. Malik kept his tone neutral. "Grounds maintenance," he said, holding up his contractor badge. The guard examined it as if searching for an error, then waved him through without apology. Malik drove on, jaw set, the familiar mix of irritation and resignation settling in his chest. By mid-morning, the garden hummed with the sound of clippers and sprinklers. Malik worked methodically, trimming hedges into clean lines, the physical rhythm easing his thoughts. He was halfway through resetting a timer when footsteps crunched behind him. "Excuse me," the guard said. "Closer now. I need to see your authorization again." Malik straightened slowly. "You just saw it," he replied. "Policy," the guard said, eyes flicking past Malik toward the house. Malik handed over the badge without comment, the silence doing more work than protest ever did. From the terrace above, Olivia Hart watched the exchange unfold. She had stepped outside for air between calls, coffee cooling in her hand, when she noticed the pause, the posture, the imbalance she now recognized too well. The guard's stance was rigid, suspicious. Malik's was controlled, contained. The scene tightened something in her chest. She set the cup down and walked toward them, heels clicking with purpose. "Is there a problem?" Olivia asked, her voice calm but unmistakable. The guard startled slightly. "Just verifying credentials," he said. "Standard procedure." Olivia's gaze moved to Malik, then back. "His credentials are valid," she said. "He's been here longer than most of us." The guard hesitated. "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," Olivia said evenly. "And I'm telling you it's unnecessary." She turned to Malik. "Are you all right?" Malik nodded once. "I'm fine," he said. The guard handed back the badge, murmured something that might have been an apology, and retreated. When they were alone, Malik let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Olivia met his eyes. "I did," she replied, "because it was happening." He considered her, measuring sincerity against outcome. "This won't be the last time," he said. She nodded. "I know." Later that afternoon, the phone in Olivia's office rang with Cassandra Vale's extension flashing on the screen. Olivia answered without preamble. "I hear there was an incident at Malibu," Cassandra said, tone smooth, concerned. "A misunderstanding," Olivia replied. "Handled." Cassandra paused. "Security exists to protect assets," she said carefully, "including you." Olivia leaned back in her chair. "People aren't assets," she said. "And protection that humiliates isn't protection." Cassandra's smile, audible even through the phone, tightened. "We'll review protocols," she said, "for everyone's comfort." Olivia ended the call without further discussion. By evening, whispers had begun. Not loud enough to confront, but present, threading through emails and glances. Travis King's name appeared in Olivia's inbox, a polite request for comment on recent changes at Hartwell Properties. She ignored it. For now, she had learned long ago that feeding speculation only sharpened it. Instead, she focused on work, on the steady accumulation of decisions that didn't make headlines but altered trajectories. Malik finished his day at dusk, hands sore, shirt damp with sweat. As he packed his tools, he noticed Olivia watching from the window, not as a supervisor but as a witness. The distinction mattered. She came down a few minutes later, carrying 2 bottles of water. "You look overheated," she said, offering one. He accepted it with a nod. "Long day," he replied. They stood side by side, the garden settling around them. "I'm sorry about earlier," Olivia said. Malik shook his head. "It wasn't your doing," he said, "but thank you for seeing it." The word seeing hung between them, heavy with meaning. He hesitated, then spoke. "There's something you should know," he said. Olivia turned to him fully. "Someone from your company contacted me," Malik continued. "Offered help, with strings." Olivia's expression hardened. anger flashing briefly before she reined it in. "Did you accept?" she asked. Malik looked away, then back. "I haven't decided," he said. The truth sat uncomfortably between them, incomplete but honest. Olivia nodded slowly. "If you choose not to tell me more, I'll respect that," she said. "But if anyone uses my name to pressure you, I want to know." Malik studied her face, then nodded. "All right," he said. That night, after Malik left, Olivia drafted a response to Travis King. It was brief, factual, unadorned. Policy changes reflected long-standing values. Contractor standards were being updated company-wide. Any insinuation beyond that was unfounded. She read it twice, then sent it. The ripple would follow. She felt strangely calm about it. Across town, Malik sat beside his mother's bed, the envelope finally open on his lap. The number stared back at him, stark and transformative. He folded the paper carefully and slid it back inside. His mother stirred, eyes fluttering open. "You look tired," she said. He smiled. "Just thinking," he replied. She reached for his hand. "About the right thing?" she asked. Malik squeezed her fingers. "About the hard thing," he said. She nodded, understanding more than he'd said. As the city settled into night, two lives moved in parallel, newly aligned but not yet entwined. Olivia stood at her window, watching traffic trace lines of light through the dark, aware that being seen came with cost. Malik stepped into the cool air outside the hospital, phone buzzing again with a name he hadn't saved. He silenced it and looked up at the sky, the stars faint but present. Somewhere between visibility and vulnerability, a line had been crossed, and neither of them could step back without losing something essential. The letter arrived on a Thursday, folded twice and stamped with the kind of authority that never raised its voice. Malik found it waiting in his mailbox when he returned from work. The envelope, heavier than paper had any right to be. He knew what it was before he opened it. He always did. Insurance correspondence had developed a tone all its own, a clinical politeness that translated into consequence. He climbed the stairs to his apartment slowly, keys warm in his palm, and set the envelope on the kitchen table as if it might bite. He opened it standing up. The words were familiar, arranged with bureaucratic care. After careful review, out of network, not medically necessary, appeal denied. The number at the bottom landed like a blunt instrument. $260,000. Malik read it once, then again, then folded the letter back along its creases. He washed his hands, changed his shirt, and drove to the hospital, the sky already bruising toward evening. His mother was awake, watching a game show she pretended not to care about. "You look serious," she said when he entered. He smiled, sat, took her hand. "Just tired," he said. The doctor arrived soon after, a woman with kind eyes and a practiced balance between hope and honesty. She spoke of options, of trials, of timelines that refused to commit. Malik listened, nodding, asking questions that kept the conversation professional. When she left, his mother squeezed his fingers. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said softly. He swallowed. "I know," he replied. He didn't tell her about the letter. He wouldn't, not yet. The drive back felt longer. Traffic crawled. A billboard promised easy approvals and quick relief. Malik laughed once, short and humorless. When he reached home, his phone buzzed with a message he'd been half expecting. "Olivia, are you free to talk tonight?" He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. He thought of Cassandra's envelope in his glove compartment, of the number that could erase so much pain at a cost he couldn't calculate. He typed back, "Yes." He added, "After a beat, I can come by." Olivia met him at the door with a look that told him she'd been pacing. "Thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside. The house was quiet, lights low. They sat at the dining table again, the folder from before replaced by a single glass of water in front of each of them. "I heard from legal today," Olivia began, then stopped herself. "That's not why I asked you here." Malik nodded. "I got the letter," he said. He didn't need to explain which one. She leaned forward. How bad? He slid the folded paper across the table. She read it, jaw tightening. This is unacceptable, she said. There are appeals. Foundations. We've appealed, Malik said gently. Twice. Olivia exhaled. Then let me help, she said. The words came quickly now, urgency edging them. I can cover it. Quietly, if that matters. Or publicly, if it doesn't. I can set up a trust. Route it through a foundation. Whatever you need. Malik held her gaze, the weight of the moment settling into his bones. I appreciate that, he said. I really do. She waited. He continued. But I can't accept your money. Her brow furrowed. Why? She asked. Pride? He shook his head. Because if I do, the story becomes simple in the worst way, he said. It becomes about a powerful woman rescuing a man who couldn't manage his life. It becomes proof for everyone who already thinks they know who I am. Olivia bristled. I don't think that, she said. I know, he replied. But systems don't care what we think. She stood and paced, frustration flickering. This is ridiculous, she said. People accept help every day. Malik's voice stayed calm. People like me accept help and then pay for it in ways that never show up on a receipt. He paused, choosing his next words with care. If I take your money, they'll say they were right about both of us. That you crossed a line, and that I was waiting for it. The room went still. Olivia felt the truth of it land, heavy and unavoidable. She sat again, hands folded. Then what do you want? She asked. Malik looked down at the table, then back up. I want time, he said, and I want the rules to be the same for everyone who comes after me. Olivia nodded slowly. That's what the policy changes are for, she said. Malik smiled faintly. I know, he said. That matters. They sat with the impasse, neither willing to bend the other. Finally, Olivia spoke. If there were a way to help that didn't put you in that position, she said carefully, would you consider it? Malik hesitated. Maybe, he said, if it was transparent, if it didn't ask me to disappear. Olivia's eyes hardened at the last word. No one gets to ask you that, she said. He met her gaze. Someone already did. She wanted details, names, leverage. She forced herself to hold back. All right, she said, then we do this right. We build something that doesn't hinge on favors. Malik nodded. The conversation ended not with resolution but with alignment. Fragile and necessary. After he left, Olivia sat alone, the letter still on the table. She thought of her mother, of cash on a counter, of leverage mistaken for safety. She opened her laptop and drafted notes for a foundation she'd resisted for years, one that addressed medical debt directly, with rules that could withstand scrutiny. It would take time. It would draw attention. She saved the file anyway. Malik drove back to the hospital, the city blurring past. He sat with his mother as she slept, the machines humming their quiet vigil. He thought of the choices narrowing around him, of help offered and refused, of dignity measured against breath. When his phone buzzed again with an unknown number, he didn't silence it this time. He answered. Mr. Johnson, Cassandra Vale's voice said, smooth as ever. I hear you're struggling. Malik closed his eyes. I'm managing, he said. We can make this easier, she replied. Malik looked at his mother, then at the dark window reflecting his own tired face. Easy isn't the same as right, he said, and hung up. Outside, the night held its breath. Two people stood on opposite sides of a system that rarely yielded, each choosing, in their own way, to resist the simple ending. Cassandra Vale did not believe in coincidence. By Friday morning, she had a clean timeline on her desk and a sharper one in her head. Olivia's policy changes, the incident with security at Malibu, Travis King's inquiry, Malik Johnson's refusal to take the easy exit. None of it happened by accident, and all of it threatened the architecture Cassandra had spent years reinforcing. She closed her office door, silenced her phone, and made the kind of call that never showed up on calendars. "Let's tighten the narrative," she told Travis, voice composed, friendly. "There's a story here if you know where to look." Travis chuckled on the other end, a sound that carried both hunger and calculation. "I'm listening," he said. Cassandra smiled, already shaping the frame. "Leadership distraction," she said. "Policy overreach. Investors unsettled by optics." She didn't mention race. She didn't need to. Travis knew how to let implication do the work. "Send me what you have," he said. "I'll ask for comment." By noon, Olivia's inbox carried the polite weight of inquiry again. She read Travis's message once, then archived it. The second message came from legal, flagged urgent. "We're hearing noise," the memo read. "Questions about precedent and exposure." Olivia closed her laptop and stood, walking to the window. Below, the city moved with indifference. She thought of Malik's words, of the letter on the table, of help that cost too much. She turned back and opened a new document, typing without flourish. "We respond with facts," she wrote, "and we don't apologize for standards." At the hospital, Malik sat through another consult, another careful explanation that ended where it always did. The doctor's voice softened when she mentioned trials, timelines that required patience he didn't have. He thanked her and stepped into the hallway, pressing his back to the cool wall. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We should talk. You're running out of options." He deleted it without replying. He wasn't running out of options. He was running out of time. There was a difference. That afternoon, Olivia called Dr. Ruth Alvarez and didn't pretend it was casual. "I need your counsel," she said. Ruth hummed. "That's new," she replied. "Come by." Olivia did. They sat at Ruth's kitchen table, a place that smelled like citrus and old books. Olivia laid out the facts, careful to leave out names when they weren't necessary. The policies, the pressure, the medical debt. Ruth listened, hands folded. "You're stepping on a wire," she said finally. "One people prefer stays buried." Olivia nodded. "I know," she said. Ruth met her gaze. "Then remember," she said, "systems don't break because someone pulls too hard. They break because enough people refuse to let go." Olivia smiled faintly. "I'm not letting go," she said. Cassandra chose the cafe near the hospital again, neutral ground dressed up as convenience. Malik recognized the strategy even before he saw her. She greeted him with the same composed warmth, slid into the chair across from him, and ordered espresso she wouldn't drink. "I hear you declined my last offer," she said, not unkindly. Malik didn't bother correcting the premise. "I told you I was managing," he said. Cassandra nodded. "And yet the clock keeps ticking," she replied. She slid a folder across the table, thinner than before. "We can revise the terms," she said. "No disappearance, just distance. A temporary reassignment. We cover the treatment, quietly." Malik didn't open the folder. "You're asking me to become invisible in installments," he said. Cassandra's smile tightened. "I'm offering you mercy," she said. Malik leaned back. "Mercy doesn't come with conditions," he replied. Cassandra's eyes cooled. "Be careful," she said. "You're not the only one exposed here." Malik felt the familiar pressure, the suggestion that consequences were communal when power decided they were. He stood. "I won't trade my name for a check," he said. Cassandra watched him go, fingers tapping the table once, then twice. She picked up her phone and sent a message of her own. By evening, the story broke just enough to sting. A blog post here, a tweet there. Words like distraction and favoritism floated without anchors. Olivia read the headlines without reacting. The calm before a practiced storm. She called legal and communications into her office and laid out a plan that refused to chase rumor. "We document," she said. "We disclose. We don't personalize." Someone asked about Malik. Olivia's answer was immediate. "We don't speak about private individuals," she said. "We speak about policy." At the hospital, Malik's mother watched him pace. "Something's wrong," she said. He stopped and sat beside her. People are trying to help the wrong way, he said. She studied his face, then nodded. Help that costs your spine is too expensive, she said. He smiled despite himself. You always did have a way with words, he said. She squeezed his hand. Then listen, she said. Do the right thing and let the noise pass. It always does. Late that night, Olivia stood by the pool again, phone pressed to her ear. If there's pressure being applied in my name, she said into the call. Voice low, controlled. I want documentation. A pause. Yes, she continued. Everything. She ended the call and set the phone down, watching the water hold the sky without comment. She knew Cassandra's moves now. The tightening circle, the offer dressed as salvation, the threat softened by procedure. Olivia felt the anger rise, then settle into resolve. Across the city, Malik stepped outside into the cool air, the hospital lights dimming behind him. His phone buzzed once more, a message from Olivia this time. If anyone contacts you again, keep the record. We'll need it. He typed back after a moment. I will. Thank you. He looked up at the night, at the stars faint and stubborn. The line between help and control had been drawn. Someone had crossed it, and for the first time since the envelope arrived, Malik felt less alone standing on his side of it. The call came just after midnight, the kind that arrives when defenses are down and resolve is tired. Malik was sitting in his truck outside the hospital, engine off, watching the third-floor window where a single light still burned. His phone vibrated once, then stopped. He didn't answer. It vibrated again. This time, he did. Mr. Johnson, Cassandra Vale said, her voice unhurried, almost kind. I don't enjoy pressing when people are exhausted, but exhaustion has a way of clarifying priorities. Malik closed his eyes. I told you no, he said. You told me you were managing, she replied. I've learned that managing is often code for suffering quietly. We can end that tonight. She asked him to meet her where they wouldn't be overheard, a private office borrowed from a subsidiary whose name meant nothing. Malik drove there with the radio off, every mile measured against the steady beep of a monitor upstairs. Cassandra was already seated when he arrived, the folder placed precisely at the edge of the table. I'll be brief, she said. We cover the full amount. We expedite payment. Your mother begins treatment without delay. Malik stared at the folder. And the cost? He asked. Cassandra folded her hands. An NDA, he said. Cassandra nodded. Standard, mutual protection. He thought of Olivia's kitchen, of policy changes that tried to make favors unnecessary, of words like accountability spoken carefully. He thought of his mother's hand, warm and light in his. She'll live, Cassandra said softly, as if reading his silence. Malik looked up. You don't get to promise that, he said. Cassandra met his gaze. I get to remove obstacles, she replied. The rest is medicine. The folder sat there, patient and heavy. Malik opened it. The number was the same, only now it meant oxygen. He closed it again and stood. I won't be erased, he said. Cassandra's expression didn't change. No one is erasing you, she said. We're editing the frame. He left without signing. He drove back to the hospital, parked, and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Inside the room, the nurse looked up with a practiced smile that faded at his face. Your mother's vitals dipped, she said gently. She's stable now. Malik sat, heart pounding, and watched the rise and fall of his mother's chest until the world narrowed to that simple motion. When she stirred, her eyes found his. You look like you're carrying bricks, she whispered. Malik swallowed. I'm here, he said. She squeezed his fingers weakly. Then put them down, she said. He kissed her hand and felt something give. By dawn, he had made the choice he hated most because it was also the most loving. He met Cassandra again, signed what he had to sign, and kept his face still. The funds moved with ruthless efficiency. Calls were made. Approvals appeared. Treatment began. Malik watched from the hallway as nurses moved with purpose that had been denied days before. He felt relief like a physical ache. He felt something else, too, a hollowing that no signature could fill. He didn't call Olivia. He couldn't. The agreement was explicit, the consequences immediate. He sent one text, neutral and thin. I need to step away from the Malibu job effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity. He stared at the message before sending it, then put the phone face down as if it might accuse him. He packed his tools from the truck, returned keys through the proper channels, and removed himself from a place that had begun to feel like possibility. Olivia read the message between meetings, the words blurring on the screen. She reread it, looking for tone, for subtext, for anything that didn't feel like dismissal. She typed back, then erased it. She tried again, this time asking to talk. The message went unanswered. A familiar cold settled in her chest, one she had worn before when alliances shifted without warning. She told herself to be reasonable, to remember boundaries, to respect privacy. It didn't help. By afternoon, the blogs sharpened their edges. Travis King published a piece heavy on implication and light on fact, suggesting favoritism quietly corrected. Olivia's communications team flagged it with concern. She waved them off. We don't respond to rumors, she said. But the rumor had teeth now, and it bit where it could. She went home early, the drive stretching longer than usual. At Malibu, the garden looked unchanged, hedges trimmed with the same care. The absence was louder. She walked the grounds alone, passing the spot where the sprinkler line had burst weeks ago. She thought of restraint, of turning away, the thought that he had taken money from someone else, that he had chosen ease over the harder path they'd discussed, pricked at her. She hated herself for how quickly the doubt took shape, how ready it was to protect her pride. If he left, she told herself, it was because this had always been a transaction for him. The lie tasted bitter, and she swallowed it anyway. At the hospital, Malik sat beside his mother as the new treatment dripped, the machines humming a steadier song. She slept, color returning slowly to her face. Relief softened him, then guilt pressed back in. He checked his phone once, saw no new messages, and slid it into his pocket. He had chosen survival. He would live with the cost. That night, Olivia stood by the pool again, the water dark and reflective. She replayed conversations, weighed silences, assembled a narrative that spared her from the deeper hurt. She told herself that power always attracted proximity, that lines blurred and then snapped back into place. She told herself that she had been naive. The water held her reflection without comment. Miles away, Malik stepped outside into the cool air, the NDA's weight settling fully now that the crisis had passed. He looked up at the stars, faint but stubborn, and wondered whether doing the right thing for one life could feel so much like betrayal of another. He turned back inside without answering the question, knowing only that the choice was made, the distance enforced, and the truth postponed, waiting for a moment when it would no longer cost someone breath. The silence stretched for days, and Olivia Hart learned that it could bruise. She went through meetings with practiced efficiency, nodded at the right moments, signed where signatures were required. The work still bent to her will, but something essential had slipped its harness. Malik's absence followed her through the house at Malibu like a draft, noticeable not in what was missing but in what no longer felt grounded. The hedges were still trimmed, the irrigation line still held, yet the garden had lost its witness. She told herself this was sentimentality, a distraction she had warned others against. It didn't persuade her. The article that finally forced her hand arrived on a Tuesday morning, embedded in an investor newsletter and framed as analysis. Travis King had sharpened his language. He wrote about leadership optics and favoritism corrected, about the quiet departure of a contractor and what it suggested about boundaries restored. He cited unnamed sources. He didn't accuse. He didn't need to. Olivia read it twice, anger rising and then cooling into something harder. The piece wasn't wrong enough to rebut cleanly. It was wrong in a way that thrived on her silence. She called legal, Pull everything, she said. Security logs, contractor communications, any contact made in my name. The pause on the other end told her what she needed to know. We'll start immediately, counsel said. Olivia hung up and called Dr. Ruth. I think I've been played, Olivia said. Ruth didn't sound surprised. People who mistake control for stability usually are, she replied. What are you going to do? Olivia looked out over the city, the lines of traffic like veins. I'm going to follow the trail, she said. All of it. The first document landed by afternoon, a summary of off-calendar meetings scheduled through a subsidiary office. Cassandra's signature appeared more than once, tidy and confident. Olivia felt the anger settle deeper, a steady burn. She requested call logs next. Then emails routed through personal devices. The pattern emerged not as a smoking gun but as a net pressure applied indirectly, favors framed as solutions, proximity reframed as risk. Olivia recognized the architecture. She had benefited from it before. That recognition cut. At the hospital, Malik watched his mother's color return with cautious relief. The treatment took hold in small, measurable ways. He slept in a chair and woke to the nurse's soft steps. He did not check his phone unless necessary. The NDA sat in his pocket like a second heart, beating out the cost of what he had chosen. He told himself he had done the right thing. He told himself the distance was temporary. He told himself truth could wait. The mantras helped until they didn't. On Friday, Cassandra arrived at the hospital unannounced, her presence a ripple that turned heads. I wanted to check in, she said, voice warm. Malik stood. You shouldn't be here, he replied. She smiled. I wanted to make sure everything is proceeding smoothly, she said, and to remind you that discretion protects everyone involved. Malik's jaw tightened. You got what you wanted, he said. Cassandra's eyes flicked to the room. We got what was necessary, she replied. Don't mistake that for an ending. She left him with the echo of her heels and the certainty that quiet was being enforced, not kept. That night, Olivia spread documents across her dining table and began the work she had avoided for years, connecting dots she'd preferred to treat as isolated. The security incident at Malibu, the cafe meetings, the offer made to Malik, the speed with which funds moved once the NDA was signed. It was all there, not in a confession but in a cadence. Olivia felt the old instinct to contain, to negotiate, to smooth. She set it aside. We don't fix this quietly, she told herself. We fix it correctly. She called the board chair and requested an emergency session. We need to address internal misconduct, she said, at the executive level. The chair inhaled sharply. That's a serious claim, he said. So is coercion, Olivia replied. So is discrimination dressed up as risk management. Silence followed. Then, bring your documentation, he said. Malik learned of the meeting through a nurse who recognized him from the news snippets that had begun to circulate. They're saying your boss is shaking things up, she said. Malik smiled politely and said nothing. He sat with his mother and held her hand. Whatever happens, she murmured, eyes closed. Don't lose yourself. He swallowed. I won't, he said, unsure whether it was a promise or a hope. The boardroom filled with tension the next morning. Olivia presented without embellishment. She laid out the timeline, the contacts, the payments, the intent. She did not name Malik. She did not need to. When she finished, she looked at Cassandra, who sat composed, hands folded. Do you deny any of this? The chair asked. Cassandra's smile appeared, measured. I acted to protect the company, she said. From exposure. Olivia spoke before the chair could respond. You acted to protect power, she said, at the expense of a private individual's dignity. Cassandra's eyes cooled. Optics matter, she replied. So does consent, Olivia said. And silence obtained under pressure isn't consent. The room shifted. Questions followed, sharper now. Legal murmured. The chair asked for a recess. When they returned, the decision was procedural and devastating. Cassandra was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Her access was revoked. The words were calm. The effect was seismic. That evening, Olivia went home and sat by the pool as the sky dimmed. She drafted a statement she would release after the investigation concluded, one that named practices without naming victims, one that committed to remedies beyond policy. She stopped, reread, and deleted a sentence that softened the truth. She saved the rest. Malik stood outside the hospital, phone in hand, watching dusk settle. A message arrived from an unknown number, then another from a familiar one. Olivia, there's a board investigation underway. I believe pressure was applied to you in my name. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make this right. Malik read it twice, the words loosening something in his chest. He typed back slowly. I couldn't tell you before. I didn't want it to cost my mother care. I didn't want it to cost you leverage. He paused, then sent. The truth felt late and necessary. Inside, his mother slept, the machines steady. Malik looked up at the first stars. The midpoint had passed. The story had turned, not toward ease but toward clarity. He didn't know how it would end. He only knew that silence was no longer the safest place to stand. The morning of the board session dawned clear and unforgiving, the kind of brightness that refused to soften hard truths. Olivia Hart arrived early, as she always did. But this time she didn't retreat to her office. She stood in the boardroom alone, hands resting on the back of a chair, looking out over the city as if committing it to memory. She had slept little. The message from Malik lingered, its restraint and honesty cutting through the careful architecture she had built to protect herself from precisely this kind of reckoning. I didn't want it to cost my mother care. I didn't want it to cost you leverage. The words felt like both an apology and an accusation, and she accepted them as neither. They were simply true. Directors filtered in, voices low, eyes attentive. Legal counsel took seats along the wall. Communications waited outside, instructed to be ready but silent. The chair called the meeting to order without ceremony. We are here to address allegations of misconduct at the executive level, he said. Miss Hart, you requested this session. Proceed. Olivia nodded once and began. She did not dramatize. She did not soften. She laid out the sequence as if it were a system diagram, because that was how it functioned. Security intervention framed as protocol, contractor contact initiated without her consent, financial inducements offered under the guise of assistance, silence enforced through non-disclosure. This, she said, tapping the screen where dates aligned too neatly to ignore, is coercion. It is also discrimination when it relies on assumptions about whose dignity can be negotiated. Questions came, sharp and procedural. Do we have proof? Were any laws broken? Olivia answered with care. We have documentation of intent, she said. We have payment timing. We have language used to describe risk that maps consistently onto proximity rather than performance. She paused, letting the room catch up. Even where the law allows this behavior, our values do not. A murmur ran the table. Cassandra Vale sat composed, chin lifted, hands folded as if at a deposition. When invited to respond, she did not flinch. I acted to protect the company, she said, from exposure that could have harmed shareholders. Olivia met her gaze. You acted to protect power, she replied. By pushing a private individual into silence under duress. That harms everyone. Cassandra smiled thinly. Optics are reality, she said. If you don't manage them, they manage you. Olivia's voice stayed level. Consent obtained under pressure isn't management, she said. It's abuse. The chair called a recess. When the board returned, the decision was decisive. Cassandra's administrative leave would convert to termination pending the investigation's conclusion. An external firm would be retained. Policy revisions would be codified and disclosed. The vote was not unanimous, but it was sufficient. Cassandra stood, gathered her things, and left without looking back. Olivia watched her go, not with triumph but with a weary clarity. This was not an ending. It was a line crossed in daylight. By afternoon, the news cycle caught up. A statement went out, measured and precise, committing the company to transparency and reform without naming individuals beyond those whose roles required disclosure. Investors reacted with uncertainty, then steadied. Analysts debated. Olivia did not watch. She drove instead, past the usual turn, to the hospital. She waited in the corridor, feeling conspicuous without an entourage. When Malik stepped out, surprise flickered across his face, followed by caution. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said. "I didn't know if I should," she replied. They stood for a moment, the air between them carrying weeks of unsaid things. "Your mother?" Olivia asked. Malik nodded. "She's responding," he said. Slowly. "But she's responding." Relief loosened something in Olivia's chest. "I'm glad," she said. They moved to a quiet corner, away from traffic. Olivia spoke first. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not in the abstract. Specifically, I'm sorry pressure was applied to you in my name." Malik held her gaze. "I didn't want to involve you," he said. "I was afraid of the cost." Olivia nodded. "I understand that fear," she said. "I've traded on it before." He looked away, then back. "I took the money," he said quietly. "I signed." Olivia didn't interrupt. "I would do it again," he added. "For her." She met his eyes. "I don't judge you," she said. "I judge the system that made that the only humane choice." He exhaled, the tension easing by degrees. "The investigation?" he asked. "It's underway," Olivia said, "and it will finish." He nodded. "And me?" she answered, without hesitation. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "The NDA you signed doesn't bind you to silence about coercion. That's settled law." Malik absorbed that. "I didn't know," he said. "They counted on that," Olivia replied. They sat together in quiet, the hum of the hospital steady. Malik's phone buzzed once with an unknown number and went still. He didn't check it. "There's something else," Olivia said. "I'm establishing a medical debt relief fund. Independent governance. Clear criteria." Malik studied her face. "For me?" he asked. She shook her head. "For everyone," she said. "So no one has to choose the way you did." That evening, Olivia returned home and drafted the final piece of the statement she had held back. It named medical debt as a structural injustice. It acknowledged harm without defensiveness. It committed resources with timelines. She sent it. At the hospital, Malik sat with his mother as she woke. "You look lighter," she said. He smiled. "Some things moved," he replied. She squeezed his hand. "Good," she said. "Movement is life." He watched the machines hum, steady and hopeful, and allowed himself, for the first time in weeks, to believe that choosing the harder path could still lead somewhere worth standing. As night fell, the city exhaled. The confrontation had happened. The line had been drawn and defended. What remained was consequence, repair, and the quiet work of living with both. The days after the board's decision moved with a peculiar quiet, as if the city itself were waiting to see whether the words would hold. Olivia Hart felt it everywhere. In the measured tone of analysts on morning calls, in the way colleagues chose their phrases more carefully, in the absence of Cassandra Vale's presence, which left behind a vacuum no one rushed to fill. Consequences rarely arrived with fanfare. They arrived with procedures, with interim leadership announcements, with calendars rewritten in pencil. Olivia accepted them all without ceremony. She spent the week doing work she had once delegated. She reviewed the external firm's scope, insisted on independence, approved timelines that refused to drift. She met with employee groups who spoke cautiously at first and then, emboldened by the lack of retaliation, spoke plainly. She listened. She took notes. She resisted the instinct to manage perception before substance. When communications asked how aggressively to message the fund, she said, "Let the governance speak." When legal warned of exposure, she replied, "Exposure to truth is not liability. The words surprised her with their ease. At the hospital, Malik settled into a new rhythm shaped by small improvements and long nights. His mother's color returned in increments, a daily victory measured in vitals and appetite. He slept when he could, read to her when she asked, and learned the cadence of the ward well enough to anticipate the nurses' rounds. The envelope from Cassandra no longer sat in his glove compartment. It sat in a locked drawer at home, a relic of a choice made under pressure that he refused to romanticize. He kept the receipts, the dates, the messages. He didn't know whether he would need them. He knew better than to discard them. One afternoon, Olivia arrived without warning, not in a motorcade but with a paper cup of coffee and a quiet knock. Malik looked up, startled, then smiled despite himself. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I wanted to," she replied. They walked the corridor slowly, mindful of voices. "The investigation will take time," she said. "There will be resistance." Malik nodded. "There always is," he said. She hesitated, then added, "The fund is live. Independent board. First disbursements within the month." He met her gaze. "That will help people," he said. She smiled faintly. "That's the idea." They stopped at the window overlooking the parking lot, cars glinting in the sun. "You don't owe me updates," Olivia said, "but if you want to talk about anything, I'm here." Malik considered the offer. "I appreciate that," he said. "Right now, I need to be present here." Olivia nodded, understanding. "Of course," she said. She left him with a nod and the rare gift of not lingering. The media cycle shifted its attention, as it always did. New outrages crowded old ones. Travis King published a follow-up that hedged his earlier implications with new context, attributing the shift to internal accountability. Olivia did not grant an interview. She let the documents speak. When investors asked whether the company had learned its lesson, she answered, "We are learning." It was the most honest response she had ever given. At home, the Malibu garden returned to itself, steady and exact. Olivia walked the grounds at dusk, noting the places Malik had repaired, the lines he had cut with care. She hired a new crew under the revised standards and introduced herself by name, not title. The workers nodded, surprised. It was a small thing. It mattered. Later, she stood by the pool and felt the absence ease into memory without dulling its lesson. Malik's mother woke one evening with an appetite he hadn't seen in months. "I could eat something real," she said, eyes bright. He laughed, relief breaking through. "We'll make it happen," he said. He stepped out to make arrangements and found a message waiting. "Olivia, the fund's first report goes public tomorrow. No names. Clear criteria. Thank you for holding your ground." Malik stared at the screen, then typed back, "Thank you for not asking me to bend it." He slipped the phone into his pocket and returned to the room, carrying the news like something fragile and good. A week later, the external firm released its interim findings. The language was careful and firm. Improper pressure, governance failures, recommendations accepted. Cassandra Vale's termination was confirmed. There were no victory laps. Olivia read the report alone, the words settling into her bones. She felt neither vindicated nor relieved, only resolved. Repair, she knew now, was a practice, not a press release. On a Saturday morning, Malik drove to Malibu for the first time since stepping away, not to work, but to return a set of tools that had been misdelivered. He hesitated at the gate, then proceeded. Olivia met him outside, hands empty, posture open. "Thank you for bringing those," she said. "Of course," he replied. They stood in the garden, the air gentle. "How is she?" Olivia asked. "Better," Malik said. "Every day." He paused. "I wanted you to know," he added. "I don't regret my choice." Olivia nodded. "I wouldn't want you to," she said. They walked a short distance together, not toward the pool but toward the hedges, where new growth caught the light. "This place looks the same," Malik said. Olivia smiled. "It isn't," she replied. He looked around, seeing it then, the small shifts that signaled a different order. "Neither are we," he said. She met his eyes. "No, she agreed. As he left, Olivia watched until the truck disappeared, then turned back to the house. Inside, she opened her laptop and began outlining the next quarter's goals, the practical work that would give the changes endurance. Outside, the garden settled. Across the city, Malik sat with his mother and planned a meal she would enjoy, a future measured not in certainty but in possibility. The noise had receded. What remained was quieter and harder, the work of keeping faith with the choices that had brought them here. Morning light reached the pool without hesitation, laying everything bare. Olivia Hart stood barefoot at the edge, the water clear enough to show the pale tiles beneath, no shadows to hide in. The house behind her was awake but unhurried, the kind of calm that came after storms decided to pass elsewhere. She breathed in, steady, and let the quiet settle. Daylight changed the pool's meaning. At night it had held secrets and fear. In the morning it offered nothing but reflection. She preferred it this way. The fund's first public report had gone live an hour earlier. Olivia had read it once and closed the file, resisting the urge to reread for reassurance. Numbers told a restrained story. Applications reviewed, criteria applied, initial disbursements approved. No names, no photographs. Just process. She knew the headlines would frame it as an answer to controversy. She also knew that answers were less important than endurance. She turned away from the water and went inside to dress for the day, choosing comfort over armor. Across the city, Malik Johnson sat at a small kitchen table with his mother, sunlight spilling across the floor. She had insisted on real food again, toast and eggs, coffee weak enough to please her. "You're hovering," she said, smiling. Malik laughed and sat. "Occupational hazard," he replied. She studied him with a look that mixed gratitude and scrutiny. "You didn't lose yourself," she said. He nodded. "I tried not to," he answered. The words felt like a conclusion he could finally accept. They drove later, not to the hospital but to a park nearby, a short walk Malik had promised once her strength returned. She moved slowly, arm tucked into his, stubborn and proud. On a bench, she watched families pass and said, "That woman you mentioned, the one who listened." Malik smiled. "She did more than listen," he said. His mother nodded. "Listening is where it starts," she said. "Doing is where it costs." He thought of the cost, of what had been paid and what had been refused, and felt the balance settle. In Malibu, Olivia met with the independent board for the fund in a room with open windows and no pretense. She spoke last, briefly. "You don't work for me," she said. "You work for the people this system forgets." The chair nodded. "We intend to remember them," she replied. When the meeting ended, Olivia walked the grounds once more, noticing the new growth along the hedges. Change didn't announce itself. It arrived incrementally and asked to be maintained. Later that afternoon, Malik arrived at the property at Olivia's invitation, not to work, but to walk. He hesitated at the gate, then passed through without comment. Olivia met him near the garden path, dressed simply, the ease between them earned rather than assumed. "It looks different," he said. She smiled. "It is," she replied. They walked side by side, speaking of small things first. The weather, the traffic, the way the ocean smelled after heat. They stopped at the pool, now bright and ordinary. Malik looked at the water and then at Olivia. "Daylight suits it," he said. "It does," she replied. Silence followed, comfortable and complete. "I wanted to say something," Malik said finally. "I didn't know how before." Olivia waited. "When I stepped away, it wasn't because I thought less of you," he said. "It was because I thought more of what was at stake." She nodded. "I know," she said. "I learned to hear that." He exhaled, relieved. "My mother starts outpatient next week," he added. Olivia smiled, genuine. "I'm glad," she said. "So am I," he replied. He glanced at the garden, at the care evident in every line. "What happens now?" he asked. Olivia considered the question. Now we keep doing the unremarkable work, she said. We don't confuse attention with justice. Malik nodded. Quiet lasts longer, he said. It does, she agreed. They walked back toward the house. At the door, Olivia paused. Would you like to stay for dinner? She asked. Malik smiled, the same small smile that had held through harder days. I'd like that, he said. They cooked together, unpracticed but unself-conscious, the conversation flowing without the weight of expectation. When they sat, the meal tasted like something earned. As dusk settled, Malik stood to leave. Olivia walked him out. If you ever want to help advise the fund, she said, there's a seat that isn't symbolic. He shook his head gently. Not yet, he said. Maybe later. She nodded, respecting the boundary. He stepped away, then turned. Thank you, he said, simply. She answered in kind. Thank you, she replied. That night, Olivia returned to the pool one last time. She sat at the edge and let her feet touch the water, watching the ripples expand and fade. She thought of power and restraint, of lines drawn and kept, of justice that did not announce itself with fireworks. She understood now that love, like justice, did not fix systems by itself. It made people brave enough to try. Across the city, Malik tucked his mother into bed and stood by the window, the night clear and honest. He felt the day settle into place, the long arc bending not toward ease but toward dignity. He turned off the light and let the quiet hold. In daylight and in dark, the pool remained just water. The choices made around it were what mattered, and those choices, carried forward without spectacle, were enough. The story reminds us that true justice rarely arrives with noise or spectacle. It is built through quiet choices made when no one is watching and no reward is guaranteed. It teaches that dignity is not a favor granted by power, but a right that must be protected, especially for those whom systems find easiest to silence. Compassion without accountability can become charity that humiliates, while accountability without compassion becomes cruelty disguised as order. Real change begins when people with power refuse to look away, and when those without it refuse to disappear. In the end, the deepest form of courage is not winning, but choosing integrity over convenience, and insisting that humanity, not status, race, or wealth remain the measure by which we treat one another.